Hey there, today I'm going to give you a tour through my unfinished sketchbooks. All of these are watercolor sketchbooks and I have been painting in them. 3 of those are my current sketchbooks that I'm actively working on. And then one of them is more of a sketchbook that I'm trying to fill eventually, but I'm not actively prioritizing. Let's check this out first. This is from the brand Etcher. This is called the Perfect Sketchbook, and it has this landscape format. It has watercolor paper, and as you can see, I started it in March of 2022. Which doesn't feel like that long ago, honestly. Time flies by. I have a few goals for this sketchbook, mainly to be kind to myself and try some new things. And I want to take time with this book, and I'm not rushing to fill this. So this is why it's still not filled. I also have a few pages that are still blank. I really do that in the beginning, and this is something that you won't see in a finished sketchbook, obviously, because at the point that it's finished, I will have filled these pages too. But sometimes I just don't go exactly in chronological order. Here I had a painting that I absolutely hated. I wanted to do something abstract, but I really hated it. And so I just glued an envelope on there and put a bunch of fun things inside it. And these are color swatches. These are the Caran d'Ache colors from the Caran d'Ache palette. And I find that these specific gouache paints don't work with this specific sketchbook. The paints are good, the sketchbook is good, but they just don't work together because the sketchbook has a rather rough texture. And you can see I was using gouache here, I was using watercolors here. And I do enjoy painting in this, but the texture is really on the rougher side. And this is something that I did plein air at the botanical gardens, and I was using crayons for this. And here you can really see the texture of the paper. And I put this plastic film on it so it would be protected, but unfortunately it bubbled up quite a bit. And here I was using gouache as well. I believe I used acrylic gouache for both of these. I started this one actually with crayons, with water-soluble crayons, and then added in details with acrylic gouache, and that way I like it much more. And I'm fairly happy with this page spread. This is probably one of my favorites in this one. This is from my sketchbook course, and I really love how playful that page spread turned out. This was meant to be simple gouache painting ideas, and I really hate it. I especially hate this page. I know a lot of people love it. It was super popular on Instagram. I just personally don't like it, but that's okay. Now here I was using Caran markers, and I'm pretty happy with how this peacock turned out. And here I was trying to create a few characters, and this is a piece that I started on a separate sheet of paper and finished, and then I glued it into the sketchbook. Now here's another empty page on the left. Those pages do get filled eventually, but it just takes a little bit of time until I can find something that I want to put here. And here's a scene from the movie My Neighbor Totoro. And that's it. That's the last thing in here so far. There's a lot more to go in this sketchbook. You can kind of see my progress in here. And due to the fact that the sketchbook has rather rough texture for my taste, I just don't gravitate towards it as much. It is a fun sketchbook, especially for watercolors, so I might do some more watercolor stuff in there. But since I use a lot of gouache, this is not my main sketchbook right now. Now this one is from the brand Hahnemühle, and it is a toned sketchbook. It has this square format. It also has watercolor paper, and I love this one right now. This has turned into my favorite sketchbook at the moment. I really love the size of that one, and I really love the paper. No first page yet. I often leave that for a later point, and then also no second and third page. You don't have to work in a sketchbook completely chronologically if you don't want to. Then this was the first thing that I did in here. This is a painting of one of my cats when he was still a baby. You can see that the sketchbook has a light gray tint, and I wanted to play around with it and see how well you could see white on top of that gray and just play around with that. And I quickly noticed that the gray tint is fairly light, so you can't really get a lot of contrast with the white, which is why I put a blue background behind him. But I was just testing the waters with this one. And here I wanted to see how watercolors look on top of the paper. I wanted to see if they still look vibrant because it is toned and watercolors are not opaque. And you can see that they're still pretty vibrant. And that's kind of the point where I started to understand why they picked this specific color for the sketchbook, because you can do white highlights and you can see them on top of the gray, but you can also paint your usual things with watercolors or more transparent mediums, and it will still look good because it's not too toned down. And here I was really playing around, just doodling, making a mess, having fun. I really recommend doing stuff like that in your sketchbooks because then you realize they're not that precious and you don't have to create a masterpiece on every page. That's not what a sketchbook is for. It's in order to play around in it, at least for me. So here I just did this sketch and I created a few highlights with some white paint. You can see that the highlights aren't that noticeable, but they add a little bit of a touch to it. And here is a painting that I did in one of my videos, one of my painting ideas. So something rather simple with the donuts, but you can add a lot of details and fun. And I also did a few of the lines in a white tone to make use of the gray sketchbook. And this one is still unfinished. I did this on a day off, just off camera doodling. So if you look into my unfinished sketchbooks, you will also see unfinished pieces. And then we have these. I really like the one on the right. This was for a very recent video where I did cottagecore inspired painting ideas. And for things like that, I really love it. I feel like I have now found the way for me to use the sketchbook. You can see here I did a pretty regular piece and then I did a little element with some white, and that really adds a little touch and just some highlights with white. And here are some more watercolor pieces. So the paper works really well with watercolor. I feel like the gray doesn't take away from the vibrancy too much, and I really love the texture of this paper. And this is the last thing that I have done in here so far. So it is a fairly new sketchbook. I started it rather recently. And here you can see how far I have gotten into this sketchbook. So there's still a long way to go until it is finished. And here we have another one from the brand Hahnemühle, and this is also a watercolor sketchbook. This is the 100% cotton watercolor book, and I really wanted that one because it is the ideal format for me, and it is really good watercolor paper. Again, nothing on the first page so far, and nothing in here either. This is something that I do quite a lot of the time, especially if I have a very precious sketchbook that I'm excited to try out. Then I will not start on the first page because I want to get familiar with the paper at first, and it's much less daunting to start somewhere in the middle. So here we have a landscape that is from one of my own reference pictures, and it's a lake here in Austria. Then we have some gouache paintings. I believe these were probably for a simple painting ideas video. I used acrylic gouache for this one, and I think that one is traditional gouache. And here we have a painting of Schloss Neuschwanstein, which is an amazing castle that I would love to visit one day. And I really wanted to paint it. And here you can kind of see that I was struggling with the middle of the sketchbook, here with the center of the pages, because it looks kind of like it's leaking or something. I don't know what happened here, but I will probably not use this sketchbook for full paintings like that anymore, where you have a lot of paint in the middle of the piece. I have another one of these here. This is from a picture that I took in Barcelona. And then I started to paint differently and just leave a little bit of space in the middle. Honestly, I don't hate it. I kind of like the way that that looks, like two pieces that belong together. And that way nothing happens in the middle of the sketchbook. Here again, I was just leaving a little bit of space in the middle. Also, those are two different pieces. And I did these on vacation, actually. We went to Santorini in the summer and it was so beautiful there. And I felt really inspired to paint, so I created these pieces. And these must be from my painting ideas videos as well. This I did with Karen markers actually, and this is a cutout, so I painted on paper and then I cut out the shapes. And this piece is inspired by a piece from Mini Small. This one is also inspired by her. She has a book with sketchbook ideas, and I took a few of those. And this is obviously also inspired by Vincent van Gogh. And then I did something on the other side with the same colors, and also I wanted to use the brush strokes. And I really like this idea of these brush strokes creating this wave across the page. So I might use this again in the future, either for water elements or maybe for clouds or a sky. We will see, but I really like the way that that looks. Then these are rather recent pieces. This is inspired by the entire Evermore album from Taylor Swift. I put a bunch of different songs into this painting, and this is also a rather simple painting idea. I got this from the book Everyday Watercolor. And these are the last things in here. You can see I also still have a long way to go with this sketchbook. These are my 3 go-to sketchbooks right now, so these will get filled eventually. But since I am working both in sketchbooks and on blocks of paper, it's just gonna take a while until all of my sketchbooks are filled. I also have this one, and it's kind of too big to even fit on screen. This is supposed to be a watercolor sketchbook, and this brand reached out to me years ago. I was super excited that the brand would send me their watercolor sketchbook, and it is a nice book, and I believe they're a small brand, and that was their first try at a watercolor sketchbook. So I do not know if they have improved in the meantime, because my issue is that this paper is much too thin and it buckles a lot, and I just have a hard time using it. It has a fairly nice texture. It's not too textured, so I might use it with acrylic gouache a little bit more. Might want to try it like that. Now this piece was actually done, I believe, on Arches paper, and I glued that in here, and this was done on the paper itself. So for rather simple things with not too many layers, it is quite okay. I was using acrylic gouache here actually, and I think with acrylic gouache it probably works the best, and with just more simple watercolor stuff. And here I was trying to do watercolor florals, but because for watercolor florals you need quite a lot of water to make it look good and loose and fun, it just didn't work the way that I wanted it to. I just didn't have that much fun with it, honestly. The paper is just not my cup of tea. I also used this sketchbook for planning and sketching as well. So this was a plan for a piece that I did on a separate sheet of paper and just some swatches and stuff like that. Here's a landscape that I think looks okay, but it's not something that I absolutely love. I also have to say that the sketchbook is just too big for me. And when I want to work in this size, I will usually just pick a loose sheet of paper and then I will really take my time with the piece because I am creating a finished art piece. So just the size and the concept of the sketchbook doesn't work that well for me. And then here we have this unfinished drawing, painting of some apples. I started painting it, wanted it to look loose, then I wasn't happy with the style of the looseness, then I used some colored pencils to add more details to make it look at least a little bit more professional, and I just never finished it. I just did not enjoy the process of that much. This is why this has this finish/fix tab on it, because at one point I want to go back and I want to finish off this page. And this page also has this tab on it. This is just some swatches and doodles, and I just want to put some more stuff on here. And also here I started stuff but didn't finish the entire page. And it's just too big of a page, honestly, because there's so much space left and I already did 2 doodles on here. Then this is also glued in here. I believe I was following some sort of tutorial or course for this and just put a bunch of color doodles next to it. And I like that way that looks. So in a way, this sketchbook is also an album where I just glue my random art pieces in that I don't know what else to do with. And here's a Christmas inspired thing. I like the wreath itself. I just don't like the lettering inside of it that much, but it's okay. Then here's another piece that I glued in here and just added some color swatches on. This is from one of Makerchino's courses, and I'm fairly happy with this piece, though it's not one of my favorites. Then this page is still empty. And here I was really trying to fill the entire page with sketchbook-like doodles that I would usually do in my sketchbook. And I was finishing off the page with backgrounds and everything. And I feel like it's just too overwhelming. There's so much going on. And if the page would just be like this, it would be so much better if it just had a little portion of it and not the entirety of it. These are actually my stickers that I used to sell, so I put a bunch of these on here as well. I mean, it's not the worst page, but it's just so much going on here. And I think I had a plan to glue this in here and maybe also glue something else in here, but I didn't actually do it. So this is the last pages that I started in this sketchbook. And it doesn't have that many pages. I might do some art collaging or something like that on the rest of the pages, or continue sticking finished pieces in here that I just don't know where else to put. So kind of using it like an art collection, like an album. We will see how I will finish this sketchbook. If you want to see a tour through one of my finished sketchbooks, then check this video out next.